Welcome everybody to the training session on the Dell System Builder for Virtualization. My name is Sai Maddali. I'm a product manager in the Dell Enterprise Solutions Group focused on virtualization and cloud offerings. Today we're going to talk about System Builder. So there is a brief agenda that I would like to cover with you all. We're going to start off understanding and looking at what System Builder is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve with it, and how it's going to be useful for you as you design and code engineered systems for virtualization. We're going to talk about various scenarios that you can work with this tool. We're also going to look at the output generated by System Builder and how you can actually use it, along with the artifacts it creates in the Dell downstream systems. We're going to look at what it takes for you to take the output created by System Builder and convert that into a full-fledged code for your customers. We're going to talk about countries in which it is supported, things that we need to bear in mind as you start using System Builder. And finally, we'll look at some resources that you will be having access to as you have questions on System Builder, you run into any errors with System Builder, and so on and so forth. Before we get going, let's quickly understand what System Builder is. System Builder is an automation platform used by Dell sales and channel teams to design, architect, code an end-to-end and complex virtualization system. We're announcing the release of the Dell Engineered System for Virtualization to provide customers the most flexible and automated path to deploy virtualization and on-prem cloud infrastructure. System Builder is going to be the automation tool that you're going to use to design, architect, and code the engineered system. Imagine you talk to your customer and they talk about getting a virtualization platform, and you have to start with either brittle Dell Star templates, and the moment they want some changes in the storage platform or they want to go from Fiber Channel to iSCSI, you're back to square one where you have to go through multiple compatibility lists, talk to multiple people in PG team, talk to specialists before you actually start providing the first reference configuration for the customer. That's a lot of pain, a lot of cycles, and really slows down the overall process for us to sell complex solutions. System Builder tries to take that, ease the pain out of that process. All it does is you got to think through this in three different phases. The first phase is discovery, right? So you come into the tool, you enter the workload parameters, so to speak. You capture customer preferences around technology choices, density requirements, performance requirements, and the tool really captures that information, processes that against logic and algorithms built, maintained by Dell Engineering to come back and provide a comprehensive recommendation based on the inputs that are provided and the output contains three key things. First, it produces detailed bill of materials, the architectural guide that talks about why we chose that bill of materials, the overall architecture of that. So you will see a nice little diagram that shows the end-to-end architecture, how things will be connected in the overall solution, and so on and so forth. The second thing that you will see is a solution ID, a configuration that is actually created by System Builder within Dell Star if you're in Americas, or in OSC if you're an EMEA and APG, or if you're a Dell partner. So it creates that configuration automatically in the backend, and it gives you a starting point for you to make further tweaks before you actually send that code and a reference code to your customer saying, here's what you asked, here's what we provided. And all of that is done automatically by asking very simple and basic questions. Also, it generates an ASM template that a customer can use after the system is deployed, rack stacked and cabled, onboarded. You can use the ASM template to actually deploy it based on best practices, maintain it, scale it, and so on and so forth. So it's really looking at three specific steps to get to a final recommendation that is tested, validated, and supported as a system by the Dell engineering team. Let's look at this by when you design a system, right, what are the four things that you always look at? Well, the first thing you look at is what is a customer's workload? What are they trying to deploy on this on the infrastructure? Two is what is the customer's operating profile? Are they a VMware shop? Are they a Microsoft shop? Are they a Fibre Channel customer? Or are they iSCSI customer? Are they looking to deploy software-defined storage? So there are some specific technology choices and requirements a customer has. The third thing you want to understand is what is their size of scalability? Are you looking at a 200 VM environment? Are you looking at a complex 2000 VM environment? Where do they want to start? How do they want to scale? So you want to understand customers' model when it comes to scaling that infrastructure. And finally, you want to understand their consumption model. Are they looking for an appliance? Are they looking for a validated architecture that allows them to get up and running faster? Are they looking for recommendations on automation post deployment? Are they looking for a single support model? So you got to understand what the consumption model value a customer is seeking from the vendor. Let's take an example to understand this better, right? So I'm going to play the role of Jane, a Dell sales specialist. So she sees an article in Wall Street Journal about a customer's push towards DevOps, right? So she sees an opportunity here. The customer is transforming their IT infrastructure. So she reaches out to the customer, starts the conversation on what their business goals are. And the customer comes back and tells them what they're trying to do. They're trying to deploy an application platform and they're looking at Dell to see what options we have. Then they go on and understand, what is the workload? Yeah, it's an application development platform with Java applications connected to a SQL backend. And then she ducktails into what are the top three requirements you have. The customer says, I'm looking for a VMware-based environment. I have people with Linux background, very comfortable with VMware. And hey, I want to deploy 300 VMs to start with and grow over a period of time. And finally, she understands what is the consumption model for this customer. The customer basically has very aggressive timelines, and they want to look at 3 months to actually go to production. Having heard all of it, captured those four critical requirements that I talked about, let's see how Jane can actually use the system builder to provide a fully validated, tested, and fully supported recommendation for the customer. So I'm going to log into System Builder in here in a second. The first thing in our example is to select the operating environment for the customer. The customer has clearly told us that it's a VMware shop. So whenever I look at the system build, the first step it's asking me is to choose the operating environment. Currently, it supports only VMware. So I'm going to select VMware. And the second question is going to ask me is, what is the storage platform the customer would be interested, right? And there could be cases where your customer is coming and telling you that, hey, I'm a Fibre Channel shop. I'm very comfortable with Fibre Channel. The applications that I'm trying to put on top of it requires 9 nines of availability, and I really trust Fibre Channel because that is something that I've been doing for a long time. So it doesn't matter how many white papers that we put before him to adopt iSCSI, but the customer might still want to prefer Fibre Channel. Or it could be a scenario where the customer is absolutely neutral. They're coming to Dell and asking us, you tell me, what do you think based on my requirements, the right platform that I need to choose? In some of those scenarios, as a user, you could be knowing what is Fibre Channel, how is it different from iSCSI, when is Fibre Channel more suited, when is iSCSI more suited. What are those questions I need to ask to further understand if a customer wants Fibre Channel iSCSI? Is a customer looking for tape-based backup because they're running some critical data set on top of this infrastructure, or are they very familiar with Ethernet? Are they looking to get the simplicity and ease of use that software-defined storage actually provides? So these questions, this window here, which really provides the assistance for you as the user to actually ask your customers those specific questions and recommend the right platform that best suits those requirements. And this is one way System Builder for virtualization is very different from a configuration tool. It's just not about what you selected. It's also about asking, it also helps you to ask the right questions to your customers in order to provide them the right advice. So in this example, I'm going to select iSCSI because that's what my customer is more interested. a customer, suppose you have questions around, hey, what is tiered architecture and LSC storage? I want to understand the basics of the architecture. I want to understand if it's vSAN. How does it scale? What are some of the best practices that they generally have with virtual SAN? The tool takes care of all the logic, but still, suppose you're interested, you don't have to go sit through hundreds of pages in Sales Edge or several different pages on VMware website or Dell Tech Center. The data is right before you. Click on that link. It takes you to that white paper where you can quickly understand and make yourselves more knowledgeable to provide the best advice for the customer. However, if you really don't want that level of information, if you will, or don't see a need for that, you can let the tool do the job for you. So in this example, I'm selecting iSCSI. So now I've selected the operating environment, the customer preferences, and then it comes down to server platform. And again, it could be a scenario where the customer is very specific that I want rack servers, or I'm looking for an FX2 like platform. Again, instead of leading with those platforms, you want to understand what those requirements are. Is density very important for the customer? Are they looking for a modular server so that they want to start small and grow big over a period of time, right? And what is that right scale unit that they're looking for? And at the same time, you want to understand how big of a fault domain they want. Is it do they want to put all the eggs in a single FX2 chassis when they are looking for a very small deployment, or do they want to spread that across multiple rack servers so that it has a larger, rather a smaller fault domain? Or it could be power consumption requirements, existing constraints that they have, which would generally decide between FX2, rack servers, and others that we have. Now, again, if I have questions, I can always go and click on Help Me Choose to get some heuristics. What kind of questions do I ask the customer to decide what is best? As you would see throughout the System Builder experience, every choice is defaulted in terms of what we think, what Dell thinks is the best recommendation for the customer. Again, density and we think PowerEdge FX2 is a great bridge between a rack server-based platform and a traditional blade architecture. It really provides the best balance between those two platforms, and hence we have defaulted to a high density and a modular server like the FX2 platform. Now I've selected the server platform, or I've left it as default. I want to provide the size of the environment. Now, if you remember in our example, the customer said, I want to deploy 300 VMs, right? Now, there are different ways I can input requirements into System Builder, and it depends on level of complexity and level of detailed inputs that you want to provide into System Builder at that time in the sales cycle. Suppose it's at 20-30% of the sales cycle. I'm just having that conversation with a customer. They yet don't know exactly the kind of VMs, the size of those VMs that they're trying to deploy. In that example, when I click on Next, I'm going to select based on number of VMs. It provides me some heuristics around these are some VM profiles that we think are what we see most customers using, right? And you can choose between these three different profiles. And since it's a three-tier application the customer wants to build, I probably want 100 VMs there that are memory intensive, 100 VMs that are CPU intensive, maybe 100 VMs that are balanced, that are somewhere in between, a CPU intensive and a memory intensive VM. However, I could be a customer who would say, hey, you know what? I don't agree with the VM profiles that you guys have, right? I have more detailed VM profiles, right? In that example, I can click on this Learn More link. It redirects me to an Excel spreadsheet that is hosted on the Sales Edge page. I can download this Excel spreadsheet, open it up, and I can start inputting the specific VM profiles that a customer is requesting for. Now, what this does is it actually does a cumulative calculation of the total virtual cores that you require, total memory that you need, total application IOPS that I need, storage capacity that I need. And once I capture those requirements, I can come back to the tool, select the option to enter the aggregated resources this time, copy the values from that Excel spreadsheet, and enter the exact values in this particular step. Now, what this is doing is it's really providing you as a sales maker the freedom to design with the right level of inputs that are required at the right time in your sales process. So it could be a customer who has very generic requirements, or it could be a customer who has very specific requirements. In any of those cases, you can still enter those inputs very precisely into System Builder. For the purpose of this demonstration, let's select a basic scenario, right? Where we go back to our example. The customer was looking for about 300 VMs, right? So I can enter 300 VMs, 300 balanced VMs, and I'm going to hit next. And what the next step is going to help me do is select the underlying CPU, memory, IOPS, capacity requirements, or choices based on the requirements the customer has entered, right? Now, if you see how customers approach designing these, right, they're mostly can be categorized into three areas. One is a budget conscious customer, right? A customer who has an X amount of dollars. They got to go implement things within that X amount of dollars. And they're really looking for a way and a pathway to do that implementation. So this is a customer is okay about 80% of the functionality, but price is a very, very important factor. Or it could be a customer who says that I just want the best performance, the best density possible from your architecture. I am not that price sensitive. I just want to make sure it's the best system I can possibly define. Or you could have a customer that falls right in the middle. I'm very concerned about price performance. I want to make sure how do I balance between those two. System Builder allows you to capture those different customer scenarios, right? It allows you to select whether you want to have the most densest high core single server, or you want to have two servers where each has a balanced core count. You could either have a server with 20 cores or two servers with 10 cores. You want to understand what is it that a customer wants. If it's density, power consumption, probably they're better off selecting the optimized for best performance and density. However, a customer says, you know what, I want to also optimize on price. The lower core processors are probably a lot cheaper than a higher core processor, so I want to probably take the more balanced approach, if you will. So I'm going to select the balance in this scenario, right? A customer also has a choice whether they want to have an all-flash configuration or a tiered configuration with hybrid configuration with SSD drives in tier 1 for caching and spinning drives for the capacity tier. Now, in each of those scenarios, right, it cannot be a simple question that we're asking, right? And this is where tools like DPAC come in, right? So you want to use DPAC to understand if a customer has a latency challenge, right? If a customer truly needs the investments that they want into flash technologies to really make it happen. Now, with respect to the choice that I make, whether it's all flash or hybrid, again, it comes down to what type of drive configuration do I recommend, right? And it goes back to sensitivities a customer has towards price, performance, latency, and several other factors. And what we have done is captured those again into three different profiles. Either you're looking for the best possible performance, or you're looking to optimize it per price, or you're really trying to optimize it for price per performance. Now, if I want to understand what System Builder is doing in the back end, right, I can always look at Help Me Choose, and it really gives me detailed summary in terms of our thinking as to what configurations that we pick on the drive sizes to recommend that configuration, as well as what are the specific drives, right? Now, the interesting thing here is while we designed the System Builder logic in the back end, we looked at our adoption path with respect to various drives that we offer with an example, let's say the SC4020. So we looked at what are the type of drives that are best suited, what are the type of drives that a customer is buying, why are they buying, right? So it's really trying to look at all our historical data and using that as a baseline to come up with what we think is three closest configurations that fit 80% of the customer requirements. Now in this example, I'm going to select balanced again, right? I've selected hybrid configuration and I'm going to hit next. Again, it's really coming back and saying, based on selections that you make, here is my best recommendation, right? And either you can believe the tool, use those choices, Or you can say, hey, you know what? I think I'll probably go for the FC430, and I think it requires more density, the customer. But they're not so big on the limitations around memory and so on and so forth. So let me just go pick FC630. At the same time, a customer might have preference for the CNAs that we're using, or a customer would come back and say, I really don't care. You Dell, tell me what is the right thing to use, and we will go use the right thing, right? So, and again, we're trying to look at both scenarios. If I don't want to make a choice, like I said, you can leave them as defaults, right? You don't even have to take an action on this step. There's also questions that we're asking around management infrastructure, right? So a customer might buy vCenter, Active System Manager, vRealize Operations, OME. Now, once they have all of this, do they want to deploy a separate management infrastructure, or do they already have existing management infrastructure? Or maybe they want to carve out a specific portion of the core infrastructure to deploy the management VMs, if you will. We support every one of those use cases. So either you can say, yes, please design the management architecture, or I don't want that recommendation. Let me select yes for this or no for this scenario, and go back and make choices around, hey, do I want to add OEM SKUs to it, right? So the advantage for the customer is we can provide a single support model for the customer, both across software and hardware, but for L1 and L2, especially from the software side. It's very valuable for the customer to have that single call experience to really resolve issues. Or a customer could come back and say, I have an ELA with my with VMware, I'm covered, or I have existing licenses that I want to repurpose. It could be whatever scenario, right? And in that scenario, I would select no, right? Also, when it comes to performance monitoring, health capacity, it's really important that as an advisor, as the best advisor for the customer, we show them the value of these choices. A customer could look at them and say, hey, yeah, this is very interesting. I would want to invest in this area. Or could say that, hey, I have an existing solution, or this is probably not the right time I want to invest, but I still want to continue thinking about it over a period of time. Either they can select yes and select the option of between Foglight and vRealize Operations, or they could say that, hey, Dell, I don't want a recommendation from you. The same thing applies with data protection, right? So the recommended bill of materials, the recommended configuration from System Builder is a very highly available architecture, irrespective of VM size that you're picking, irrespective of fabric choices that you're making, irrespective of the platform choices that you're making. But again, if a customer wants additional insurance of making sure the data on the primary storage is protected securely, they probably want to have a validated backup and recovery solution. So customers can say, hey, or your customer can select a backup and recovery solution, or they may have existing investments that kind of covers that part. Irrespective of the scenario, let's say I select for this scenario that I want it to be data protected, right? I'm hosting critical environment, critical data, and I want to back them up. The next step is about adding services, right? So like I said, you can leave them as default, where we think it provides the best possible experience, whether it's Pro Deploy Plus, Pro Support Plus. And you can quickly look at the differences between Pro Deploy Plus, Pro Support Plus across multiple levels. You can also look at the service descriptions of each of those offerings by clicking on Learn More, getting to the service descriptions for each of those offerings. In this example, let me leave them as default and go to step 9, right? Now this step is basically a comprehensive view of all the inputs that you've entered. So I can go in, change a few things. For example, I want to change the server platform to rack servers because customer, as you're walking the customer through this design as well, he has a change of heart, or a few other variables have come in that has influenced that design. So I'm going to go quickly through the step to validate that change. So as you can quickly see, it has moved from FX2 to rack servers. And now I'm ready. I've reviewed it one final time. I really like what I see, and I want to hit get recommendation. So as this is processing all of this information, what it's doing, it's going back and making sure it uses the logic and algorithms developed by engineering to come back with the right recommendation. And you can see here, you have a recommendation now. Let's analyze this output for a minute, right? So the first thing you see is this a nice little diagram, right? It shows me the full architecture, irrespective of whether I've selected management infrastructure, irrespective of whether I selected monitoring. It really shows me the full scope of the solution, right? And how many. It really gives me that full scope of the solution so that our customer understands how various elements can be connected. It also gives me a quick list of the bill of materials, right? Hey, what are the different platforms that I've added? How many servers did it add? How did it size it, and so on and so forth. I can also see a lot of documentation associated with that. So how do I deploy this? What's the design guidance behind it? How is it architected? Why did we add various elements? What's the value proposition of it? How is HA enabled? How is backup and recovery guaranteed? A lot of those technical details that are very critical for the the IT department of your customers. Those are captured in that design guide. There's also ordering guides. So there are a few things that you want to add, some SMP SKUs or what have you, or you want to complete the last mile configuration of this in the downstream coding and ordering systems. There's a detailed step-by-step document that allows you to kind of get there. There's also a system design summary that quickly gives you why we chose what platforms. Why did we select SC4020, right? Why not SC9000? Why not vSAN, right? Some of the logic is actually exposed, if you will, as part of the system design summary. Also, not everything today is generated automatically in the Dell backend system, and I'm going to show that in a minute. There are some elements that needs to be driven through other elements that we have, right? So for example, SC4020 and SC9000 have to be quoted in North Americas using Code Center. So now when I go to Code Center, how does System Builder help me, right? The way it helps is it actually gives you detailed guidance around what front-end cards you pick, how much memory do you pick, what is the back-end connectivity, how many enclosures do you need to have, what type of professional services I need to add, what software do I need to add, what type of drives I need to add, how many drives I need to add. So it really gives you that detailed description based on sizing logic that is really built into this tool, based on those inputs that you've actually provided to the System Builder tool. One of the other things, it also allows you to download all of this recommendation as a PDF document. Suppose you want to save it, you want to send it out to the customer, you want to review it later. It actually allows you to capture all of that information into a PDF before you actually send it out to the customer. The last thing, but a very critical thing, is it also generates a solution ID, as you can see on the top of your screen here. That solution ID is what connects the System Builder recommendation to a configuration or rather a Dell Star template or an OSC template. So this is basically creating a template for you on the fly based on the inputs that you've entered, based on number of VMs that you've entered, based on the recommendation that it thinks it's best fit for the inputs that you've entered, that is validated by the Dell engineering team. So now I select the solution ID. Let me go back to our favorite tool in North Americas, Dell Star. I'm going to enter solution ID in there in that open solution, and I'm going to hit open, right? And as you would see, as it comes up, it provides a fully validated recommendation with the number of platforms, the type of cards you need to have in each of those platforms, and so on and so forth, to come back with a fully populated recommendation. Now I can always go in here and change the processor core, so I can pick with more cores or less cores. I can change the memory for the server and so on and so forth. So like you can see here, starting with a customer requirement by answering some basic questions, I'm able to get to a reference configuration within a matter of a few minutes. Now again, this is a reference configuration, right? It's trying to understand at a very high level customer requirements and still provide a very detailed recommendation. You can turn around and give this configuration back to your customer. Here is the code. Here is what you've asked for. Here is why we've recommended with the architectural guide. Here's some architectural diagrams. Here is an ASM template that automates it. Here is the overall proposal in terms of what we're proposing, and by the way, here is how much it's going to cost, right? You can do all of that with basic steps and without ever getting in touch with a specialist, talking to multiple people in PG, looking at multiple configuration guides, and so on and so forth. However, the customer could look at it and come back and say, hey, you know what? I probably want to lower the price down by taking off few two drives, right? So I don't need this many number of SSD drives, or hey, I want to further optimize the amount of memory that I have on each of those server, right? And that at that time, you obviously want to go talk to the specialist, involve the specialist, especially on storage sizing, just to make sure you can go address some of those last mile requirements a customer has, which anyways you would do today. So the goal of this is to really make the first recommendation very simple, easy, and really save a lot of time for us as well as for customers. And let's go back to our example, right? So now we've given them a configuration to the customer. The customer comes back and says, you know what, I like this approach, but I really want to use a software-defined storage platform, right? So I'm going to go back and hit start over, right? And I confirm that, yeah, I want to start over. And it will take me back to the starting screen in a minute here to really go back and change my options all over again. One of the things I'm going to do here is I'm still going to select VMware, and instead of selecting iSCSI like I did last time, I'm going to select software-defined storage because my customer said, why don't you give me a code on that too as well? I want to go compare and contrast. I want to see what do I get different from one versus the other. Now I'm going to go back, hit the same 300 VMs, the initial request that came in, right? So I'm going to go enter 300 VMs. And this time, it has skipped a few steps, as you might have seen, right? Because for the software-defined storage, some of the questions that were being asked for iSCSI are no longer relevant, right? Because we've done validation only for rack-based platforms and several other reasons, right? So there are some options that are removed when you have selected software-defined storage. That is also the power of System Builder. It works like a decision engine. Every response that you're making in one step is actually deciding some of the options that are available in the next few steps. So I'm going to leave those as default. I'm going to add SKUs, the vSAN SKUs as well. I don't need any health capacity and monitoring solution. I don't need data protection solution. So I'm going to select no there. Or actually, for fidelity's sake, let me just select data protection for this. And I'm going to select the service offers as well. Pro Support Plus, Pro Deploy Plus, the same offers. And then I want to get a recommendation. And this time we expect the tool to go back and provide me a recommendation for software-defined storage. So as you can see here, within few steps, I'm able to really go change my options from a fiber channel based solution or an iSCSI based solution to a software-defined solution by actually answering few basic questions. Now let me go back and redo another scenario again, right? So I see a fully populated BOM in this scenario, right? Now let me actually go and start over, and my customers come back and said, you know what, I don't want to stick with iSCSI, but this time I want it to be with with FX2 chassis because I've just changed my mind, right? Now what does it mean in the current scenario? You have to go back, redo a lot of stuff, a lot of pain in the system, if you will, right? But you cannot say no to the customer. It basically means you need more time, and it slows down the overall process. So you're going to go back, and this time with VMware, I'm going to still select iSCSI. I'm going to select this time FX2 servers. And I'm going to select number of VMs there as 300 VMs. I'm going to leave everything as is, would not make any changes. I would select the everything as default. Next. And then I would now get a recommendation that is really based on FX2. Again, you can see as you can really move a customer through various scenarios as you're having that whiteboarding conversation with a customer, where the customer is really coming up with logical requirements. You're sitting there with the customer, accessing the platform, making those changes, providing them recommendations, provide them with full recommendations very quickly, very easily in a matter of few minutes. So this time I see that the configuration is based on iSCSI, right? It's not software-defined storage, it's not fiber channel, but it's really based on PowerEdge FX2 versus rack servers that we've seen in the first scenario. And I can do everything that I've done previously. I can go to Dell Store, take the solution ID, start configuring it, and so on and so forth. But let me show you one critical thing with FX2 though, right? So when you're going to select a configuration with FX2, you're going to see some errors some errors popping up, right? And those are really very much related to the to the FX2 association, or the FC630s or the FC430s, FNIOA's association with the FX2 chassis, as far as splitting those codes is concerned, for making sure they are delivered as a single chassis, or a comprehensive chassis, as a convert solution, if you will, as part of the bill of materials. Now I see some errors. Like I said, it's a limitation of the current 1.0 implementation. However, I can always go back to my configuration guide that I've downloaded from the output of System Builder, to really go look at step by step how do I fix these association errors manually, but really with good guidance that can allow you to turn this code and remove the errors that, if you will, very quickly and very easily. All right, so I also want to leave the discussion with some basic stuff that we need to care about. The first thing is, always hit start over, just like the way I've done it, right? Don't try to hit step one, step two, add the recommendation. If you are trying to start over, always just start over, because as like I said, this tool is integrated with the backend system, so you want to be very careful in terms of making sure you do things right to get the right recommendation. So use always start over if you're not unsure, or you want to get the next recommendation, or you want to change your recommendation, and so on and so forth. Number two, use previous and next versus using the circles on the top. Right? Again, when you skip few steps, the backend system has will cause confusion of the backend system. So always use next and previous buttons as you navigate through the System Builder tool. The third most important thing, there could be sometimes slight delay between producing the solution ID on the output screen towards getting the template populated in OSC or Dell Star. Now that delay could be like a minute or two. So if you don't see a solution ID not being generated, if you will, by any chance, which is rare to happen, but if it happens, just give it a couple of more minutes, check back again, and you would see the solution ID and the Dell Star template being, or the OSC template being completely populated. Up to now, you've actually seen the tool being integrated into Dell Star, right? But the same is also true in EMEA and APJ, as well as for channel partners as they use this tool. So instead of using Dell Star, when the solution ID gets generated, in that case, they will actually use the online solution configurator, or OSC. So depending on the region that you're in, depending on the system builder country that you're selecting, it will actually generate the right recommendation and the right system for you to actually go do the last mile configuration. Which brings us to understanding a few other things that we want to note. The first thing is this is a recommendation, right? So while we take care of most of the customer requirements, there could be some specific customer requirements that are very specific to just that one customer that cannot be taken into account in the design logic of this tool. So in that case, use this as a starting point, right? Work with your SC storage specialist. If a customer has a request to encrypt these drives or change the drive configuration to absolutely optimize it for the nth level requirement that they have. And again, having an automated way to generate the configuration really makes sure that you're fully showcasing the value that Dell can provide, number one. Two, it allows you to provide the starting point configuration for the customer just to make sure you're on the right path, right? Three is it makes an efficient use of our specialist resources, because by the time you get to that level of configuration, you're absolutely sure what your customer is looking for, right? So you're not really leading with a lot of unknowns and really not making the best use of your specialist time. And finally, this recommendation doesn't include cables, PDUs, racks, right? So those are things that we need to still do using the traditional approach. While using this tool, or you have any questions about either System Builder for virtualization or the Dell Engineered System for virtualization offers that we have, please email us at system_builder@dell.com just to make sure we can come back and address the question that you have. What if we encounter an error, right, while you're designing and using System Builder? What if you encounter an error? Now, obviously, you can email us with the error to system_builder@dell.com. But there are three things that we request you guys to enter in that email as you send it over to that email alias. The first thing is always copy the solution ID from the tool, right? So this the solution ID that got generated. Also, copy paste the hyperlink that you see on the top here at the after the get recommendation, just to make sure we can always trace back in what scenario the issue occurred, replicate it, and so that you don't have to come back and tell us, hey, I selected this option in this step, and so on and so forth. And finally, you can also send us a screenshot. If you're in OSC, you see an error. If you're in Dell Star, you see an error. Please send us a screenshot as that would also help us further understand what the issue is. Before we close out, though, I want to talk about support for System Builder across various countries. There are two levels of support that System Builder has. One is full support in about 12 countries. That 12 countries include US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, UK, Germany, France, Japan, China, India, Australia, and New Zealand. These are the top 12 countries where we are enabling System Builder to ensure that it can actually create that Dell Star or OSC template in that specific country system. What if you're not you want to use System Builder? Let's say you're in South Africa and you want to use System Builder, right? For that customer who is in South Africa. Now, in that case, I would actually log into the UK System Builder, go through the same 8 steps that we talked about, right? And then once I get to that recommendation page, this solution ID is no longer as useful to me because it's going to generate in the UK system. I can always download the full recommendation into a PDF document and basically use that PDF document with all the details, if you will, to basically come back and say, hey, here is what the recommendation is, and that PDF document contains a lot of fine details, as you would see in a minute. I can see here it has very, very precise details on the quantity, the type of memory you need to add. So you can actually take this recommendation, go to your technical sales representative in your region, and basically create this manually. While this may not be able to generate a code automatically in a few minutes, it's still very, very useful as you have a very good starting point, even if you have to create the code manually within OSC or Dell Star based on the region that you are in. So to conclude and summarize the training presentation, we talked about what is System Builder, we talked about how to use System Builder, we talked about how to use the output generated by System Builder, we covered if System Builder, what do you do if System Builder is actually not available in your country, we talked about last mile configurations that you have to do within Dell Star or OSC post the recommendation that is generated through System Builder. Again, if you have any questions about System Builder or using System Builder, or you see an error with System Builder, please reach out to us at system_builder@dell.com. Thanks again for participating in the training session.